اللي راح أقرأ اسمه يقوم يردد الشعار ويلحق ربعه.
The man who once ruled with absolute power finally faced the rope, and the whole world watched. For decades, Saddam Hussein's grip on Iraq seemed unbreakable, but when his downfall came, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen, broadcast live for millions to witness.
You want to tell me what this is all about?
And this is where it all begins. Saddam didn't just take power, he swallowed a whole country. On July 16, 1979, he became Iraq's ultimate authority. And almost overnight, the streets, schools, and offices were plastered with his face. Everywhere you looked, Saddam was watching. Speeches blared over radios and TVs, and the air seemed thick with his presence. Disagree? Say the wrong thing. The consequences were brutal. Prison, torture, even death could follow. And it didn't stop with just you. Families disappeared, homes emptied, and whispers vanished into silence. Loyalty wasn't requested, it was demanded. Fear wasn't an accident, it was an art form. For over 2 decades, Saddam's iron grip made opposition feel impossible. To the world outside, he seemed untouchable. A living, breathing warning of what absolute power looks like. Here now, it gets real. 2003 swarmed Iraq. Rolling in, the US and its allies asserted Saddam was behind terrorism and concealing WMD. Missiles illuminated the Baghdad sky, bombs rattled the streets, and Iraqi defenses collapsed like sandcastles. By April 9th, tanks advanced through the city, metallic monsters tearing a path through mayhem. Some people hid. Others observed, unbelief etched on their countenances. And then it occurred. Among the most famous pictures of the conflict is Saddam's towering statue in Firdos Square, which was plummeting, crowds cheering, shoes pounding on what had been a symbol of dread for years, frozen faces. His intimidation-based administration disintegrated into nothing in just days. Still, the narrative was still going on. Driven to avoid capture, Saddam disappeared into the darkness. The United States wouldn't let him fade. One of the most extreme manhunts, Operation Red Dawn, began. Thousands of soldiers searched Iraq. Helicopters flew overhead. Armored vehicles rattled through settlements. Intelligence teams chased every lead. Every suggestion counts. Allies were arrested and questioned, sometimes fractured, pointing more toward Saddam. Soldiers bore a deck of cards with his most sought-after regime members. Saddam, the ace of spades, the ultimate target. Months of following his habits, examining his loyalties, and following leads culminated at Tikrit, his hometown, generating worldwide interest. Then December 13th, 2003, brought the long-awaited moment. Framed by date palms and farmland, U.S. forces encircled a silent farmhouse close to Ad-Dar. Until they came across a patch of soil buried under garbage, the search appeared usual. Clearing it exposed a small underground bunker, barely enough for one man, hiding Saddam Hussein himself. He looked unshaven and worn and wore flimsy clothes inside, just a weak human form. No weapons, no final stand. Some troops shook their heads, checking for lice, while others laughed nervously, staring in disbelief. Captured unfought was the untouchable despot feared for years. His capture by U.S. troops finally brought a years-long search to an end. The catch was just the beginning. Saddam was under tight U.S. supervision for almost 2 years. Every step was meticulously devised to discourage loyalists from trying a rescue. Rumors about his condition went everywhere. Was he damaged, rebellious, or plotting something? Peak public interest was in the man who governed by terror. On October 19, 2005, Baghdad's courtroom doors opened amid strong security. Simply by going, judges, lawyers, witnesses, and soldiers put their lives at risk. Saddam seemed resolute and calm, dealing with the Dujail massacre case that shaped his demise. Survivors told of the 1982 Shia town raid, where families were tortured, murdered, and left in ruins, a terrible tribute to his rule. And now the court has become a battlefield. Saddam stood before the accusations that had haunted him for decades within a heavily defended room in Baghdad, encircled in concrete and barbed wire. Some had already been murdered. Threats of attacks hung over judges, lawyers, and witnesses. Live camera broadcasts throughout Iraq. Riveted, citizens watched the man who once ruled with an iron fist argue, yell, and defy the court. Saddam called the tribunal illegal, his voice cutting through the tense room, challenging the authority of those around him. Testimony, proof, and eyewitnesses all pointed to one day, November 5, 2006, the guilty verdict on crimes against humanity for the Dujail slaughter. Hanging was the punishment. Barzan al-Takriti, the half-brother and head of the intelligence service, along with Awad al-Bandar, the chief judge at the Revolutionary Court, were all destined to die the same way. Some people in the audience clapped, others shouted in anger, a tiny indication of a country that was split between revenge and justice. Beyond the court, the nation exploded. In Shiite areas, happiness soared. Flags waved, guns fired into the air, and crowds celebrated decades of terror, ultimately ending. Finally, justice had arrived, but rage seethed only kilometers away in Sunni areas, specifically Saddam's hometown of Tikrit. Chanting his name, waving his pictures, and protesting the judgment, people accused the court of political vengeance. Rather than unifying Iraq, the execution exacerbated already present sectarian divisions. Already a daily terror, bombings and shootings exploded. Once active streets became tense battlegrounds, a clear reminder that Saddam's death would not heal the wounds of war, but rather spark fresh fires of violence. Then the final countdown started. Encouraged by the need of law and terror of revolt, the Iraqi government hurried to implement the sentence before 2006 finished. Saddam's last appeal was rejected on December 26th, leaving only a handful of days till the execution. The ex-tyrant was brought to Camp Justice in Baghdad, a place that was as dark as its name, and he met his last hours with terrifying peace. The guards remarked about his serenity, no begging, no fear. He ordered a very plain meal, boiled chicken and rice, eaten quietly and painstakingly, almost as if he was holding on to the last minutes of being a normal person. The night was for prayers, soft talking, and thinking. Chaos was still covering Baghdad. The sounds of shooting and explosions were far off, yet very close. They were the bitter reminder of the very weak state of the country. A dictator was inside, waiting for the same fate he had imposed upon innumerable others. The moments were ticking down towards history, and then the day history would never forget. Early December 30th, 2006, precisely during Eid al-Adha, a day often full of joy, now darkened by death. Hands bound in front, Saddam approached the gallows calmly, and each step was purposeful. No stumble, no pause. He declined a hood, demanding an open death with unflinching eyes. Inside the frigid, drab room stood a handful of witnesses, judges, officials, and guards, all apprehensive, aware of the forthcoming seconds. The space stopped to breathe. The lever was pulled at exactly 6:05 a.m. Saddam's body hung dead, the trapdoor swung, and the rope tightened. The room went quiet momentarily. Then came the mayhem. Some screamed in fury, others clapped, voices clashing in a blend of relief, rage, and surprise. Hours later, a small cell phone recording was made available online. Unedited and raw, the globe watched. People from all over continents saw what was intended as a contained act of justice. A tyrant diminished to a human end in all its horrific, unforgettable reality. Under great security, Saddam's body was flown from his birthplace, Al-Auja, in a basic white shroud. A victim of a 2003 U.S. action, he was buried near his sons, Uday and Qusay, before dawn. Quiet, somber, and practically ghostly the event was. Some of them grieving, others silent, tribal elders, family members, and a few devoted followers gathered around the tomb, knowing that history had changed beneath them. However, Iraq was not healed by the funeral. It deepened rather than healed a divided country. Sunni and Shia coexistence became very difficult, the memories of fear and revenge being very alive, and Baghdad's streets were still shaking. The shadows of his reign were still present, but the ruler who once wielded absolute terror was no more. And the unvarnished reality is that Iraq had no help in 2007. Increasingly violent, daily bombings, shootings of individuals, and abductions became the normal routine. Every district was either guarded by militias or soldiers, and Baghdad turned into a city surrounded by walls of checkpoints. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes as entire towns turned into deserted places, roads got worse, and families ran away. The world was witnessing the execution of Saddam Hussein from the leaked video, which turned out to be a terrifying and never-ending image serving as the darkest reminder of the cost of power, terror, and revenge. His execution did not symbolize the end of oppression, but rather the continuance of it for decades. A man who built his empire on fear died in terror. Iraq, meanwhile, still split and traumatized, bore his trace. Saddam Hussein's death didn't merely put an end to a regime, it brought to light the miserable cycle of revenge that devoured Iraq. His death wasn't closure, it was a warning that tyranny, once unleashed, never fades quietly. So what's your take on this? Drop it in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe for more real stories that shaped our world.